You better watch out! The migrants are coming. They're coming in numbers, in waves. They're crossing borders, taking our jobs, flooding our systems. They're drowning our NHS. At least that's what we're told. What about the stories we're not told? Detail behind the news headlines and catchy slogans. It's easy to forget about the real people involved. It's even easier to push them out of sight and out of mind. But when we do this, they don't just disappear. My name is Dr. Priyesh Patel. My last humanitarian aid mission was a search and rescue in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea about a year ago. Every day, countless people attempt to make dangerous crossings, hoping to reach Europe. Lives hang in the balance, and we were there to pull them from the sea and bring them to safety. Search and rescue training was unlike anything I'd seen. 30 of us, one crew, prepared for every scenario, a man overboard, a fire on deck. And as medics, we trained day and night for eventualities like dehydration, fuel burns, hypothermia, mass casualties. We even planned how to handle multiple drowned bodies and where to store the dead. But deep down, I was nervous. I felt the pressure. I was the lead medical decision maker in the middle of the sea. No other ships on the horizon, no other help in sight, and the nearest land was Libya, a nation grappling with political instability and where armed groups still operate. Everything on the ship felt perfectly organized, but I kept thinking to myself, what if we did come across someone about to die? What if there were 10 of them and we had to pick which ones to save first? How would I do an emergency cesarean section in the middle of the sea? And what if our ship was fired at during the rescue? And then came the day. August 31st, 2024, 5 a.m., that bright crescent moon was pointing upwards in the night sky. It was full of stars. It was dark. And there were glowing red lights above massive oil rigs. And in the distance, I could see the pinpoint reflections of over 50 pairs of glaring eyes staring right back at me. They were on a small boat, wooden or rubber, bouncing and rolling in the waves, and we, on our deck, stood still, ready for rescue. And to the left was another shadow of a small boat. And on the far right, in the distance, another. And on the horizon, another that we could only see with our binoculars. The conditions at sea were brutal. Small boats amplify every wave, churning stomachs, making seasickness more common. And the overcrowding, unsanitary conditions, and the lack of hygiene on the small boats only made it worse. We treated many unwell people and saw evidence of torture and abuse. And yet there, on that ship, in the middle of nowhere, I made one of the biggest medical decisions of my career. We had a child on board that was seriously unwell and in need of life-saving scans and surgery that we simply could not do in the middle of the sea. So that afternoon, after discussing with the crew, I asked for them to be urgently evacuated off the ship to the nearest hospital. And over the telephone, I described the child's condition to the nearest Coast Guard. And then we waited. 4, maybe 5 hours later, out of that endless blue horizon, grey helicopter emerged. It was slicing through the sky. It was like something out of an action film. And that's when the fear crept in. You see, a helicopter evacuation in the middle of the sea is inherently risky. One wrong maneuver, a mechanical failure, a sudden gust of wind, and that helicopter could go down. The whole ship with it. All of us. Gone. And I was used to ordering blood tests and x-rays, not helicopters. It was hovering above us, its blades roaring and sea spray flying in all directions. And within 5 minutes, that child was winched up and on their way to Malta. And everyone on board cheered and clapped. And for the first time that day, I could smile with relief. Later, things began to calm on board. Laughter returned, and the children running carefree across the deck as if the sea hadn't just tried to swallow them up. They took our simple vomit bags and they colored them in with crayons. They left them for the crew as little surprise as a simple thank you for rescuing us. And inside mine was a note, and it read, I love you. I still keep it to remind me of the real people behind the headlines. After the mission ended, I came home to London, and I found it hard to talk to my friends about what I'd seen. Some people had fierce opinions on migration, others complete disinterest, and I can understand why. I mean, after all, I did this on my own time, not during NHS hours. But for me, it's simple. It's not about borders or politics. As a health professional, I believe I have a duty to offer care without judgment, regardless of where someone was born or how they arrived. Everyone deserves to have their life saved. And on that mission, we brought people to safety. We gave children clean water to drink, blankets to keep them warm, food for their hungry tummies, medicines for when they were sick. We made sure they didn't drown. The crew rescued 289 migrants over a 5-hour period, including 7 women, 20 children, and 14 unaccompanied minors. We would not hesitate to save the life of a child in a hospital bed. So why would we hesitate when that same child pulled from the sea? I grew up with traditional Indian heritage, where the caste system had already decided who mattered and who didn't. An entire group were made unseen and unheard. The Dalits, once called the untouchables. People deemed so impure that even their shadows were contaminating. They were forced into the most dehumanizing work, like cleaning human waste. And I was taught to avoid them, to look away, never, ever touch them. This idea that some lives are worth less than others is still alive today. I've treated victims of human trafficking in abandoned factories. I've seen these gangs who carry guns and ruthlessly exploit the ones they traffic, exploiting them for crime, domestic servitude, even their organs. 1 in 10. That's how many organ transplants worldwide involve a trafficked organ. 1 in 10. It's $1 billion industry, and it's growing. And I would ask you to imagine what it's like to have to sell a kidney for money. But the idea that these people are selling kidneys is misleading. Those organs are not sold. They're stolen. The sellers are victims lured by false promises of money and a better life, manipulated, ultimately betrayed. And some of these unlawful transplants happen right here in the UK. In 2023, 3 kidney traffickers were convicted at the Old Bailey in London. Others happen abroad, and afterwards, the recipients return home to our NHS for care. But either way, it's our health system picking up the bill, paying for the complications of botched surgeries, years of follow-up appointments in transplant clinics, medications to keep the organs alive, and the victims who lost a part of their body, they stay out of sight, out of mind. And as well, across Europe, there are men and women who went to the sex trade willingly, but many are driven there by poverty, debt, and coercion, risking violence, injury, and even death. In London, female sex workers are 12 times more likely to die, often by murder, than women of similar age. And when this happens, as well as the grieving families and friends left behind, there's an economic cost to crime. The Home Office estimates the total cost of one homicide to be over £3 million. So no matter how hidden they are, what happens to the most vulnerable among us ultimately affects us all. Right here in the UK, they're estimated to be 130,000 people trapped in modern slavery and over 100,000 people involved in the sex trade. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are countless other vulnerable groups also at risk of harm, and the numbers are growing year after year. This isn't a theory. They're waves in a hidden public health crisis. This is what is happening, whether we choose to see it or not. But I was barely taught about human trafficking, or modern slavery, or illicit organ harvesting, or female genital mutilation, or homelessness. I had to go out of my way and take risks to learn about these things. But in the emergency department where I work, we say prioritize the sickest. And we say this because saving a life is the first and the last thing that we do. If we see someone struggling, we help them to live, no matter who they are. I believe this principle should be true inside and outside of the emergency department. So what if we look beyond the front page narratives and saw the real people and the lives behind them? Maybe we could help the woman who's been forced into sex work and protect her from danger. Maybe we could safeguard vulnerable people from believing that there is no other option than to surrender an organ from their bodies. Wouldn't that ultimately be better for us all? But if we continue to ignore them, push them out of sight, we accept a world that decides that some lives aren't worth saving. And you don't need to rescue people from the sea or work in the emergency department. All you need to do, take notice. Look beyond the tabloid headlines that we're so used to, for the actual stories. So yeah, the migrants are coming. But they've always been coming. For their sake and ours, let's get this right.